Hello everyone, it is July 1st, 2020 and it is 10:06 p.m. I thought I'd do one of my remakes and I said that I was going to do this video. Yesterday I said I was going to do this video tomorrow, and today is yesterday's tomorrow, so that means today. So I'm finally gonna do it. This was actually the very first video I made on this where I not video, but the very first like rant video or the very first video where I talked to the camera. And that is getting yelled at. Now, let's just be honest for a sec. No one likes to get yelled at. Even if you're like a really tough person and you can handle that, just admit it. No one likes to get yelled at. But some people just have a very, very hard time handling it. I'm one of those people. Usually people who are on the spectrum, people with autism or Asperger's, or just something that things that put them on the spectrum or give them something similar. I noticed that those types of people have the tendency to be really sensitive to getting yelled at, and I'm one of those people. I'm not diagnosed with autism or Asperger's, but I do have another diagnosis called neurofibromatosis. And in my case, it does put me on the spectrum, and hell, sometimes I do feel like I do have autism or Asperger's. Sometimes when I get yelled at, not all the time, but sometimes when I get yelled at, it will make me feel like crying, and I would try to not cry. I would try to fold in the tears, it's not fun. I know getting yelled at is usually only something a little kid would cry about, but I do that too sometimes, and I'm 22. Anyway, I'm gonna tell some stories like I did in my last video, in my other video about this, of getting yelled at. I'm gonna reuse some stories from my last video, but I'm gonna also try to think of new stories as well. I can remember this was either April or May of 2017. I believe it was one of those months, April or May of 2017. I told this in my story, in my other getting yelled at rant, and I talked about it a lot more in my long road trips rant, which I'm going to be doing that remake soon. Okay, so what happened was, it was early in the morning. It was I was just laying there in bed, I can hear my parents arguing. I wasn't sure what they were arguing about, but I heard something about the RV and cooking breakfast, something like that. So I just kind of stayed in my room for a bit. And then after my dad left for work, I went into my mom's room. I don't know what made me go in there. I guess, I don't know. I guess I just kind of wanted to, like, say good morning or see what was up. I don't know. But my mom was like, I talked to your dad about you not wanting to go to Virginia to see David and Angie. And then I was like, oh my gosh, because I had that on my mind. Like, I was worried. I was literally worried that very argument was going to happen eventually. From the time my dad mentioned about the trip, which was August 2016, I keep making a mistake in my videos and saying August 2018, but that's an accident, because obviously that's not gonna, I wouldn't have an argument with my mom about it before my dad mentioned it. You know, it has to be after. But yes, ever since my dad, like, I overheard my dad talk about going over to Virginia way back in August 2016, I was just dreading. I have just been dreading the argument that was bound to happen. Like, I still remember to this day, like, when my dad was talking about it to my mom for the first time. I was just in my room playing a game on my phone, and then I heard my dad say something about going, and I was like, oh God, to myself, because I knew it was a long ass drive to Virginia from Texas. So yeah, like, and I held off on talking to my mom for a while because I was worried she was gonna get upset with me for not wanting to go. So I kind of held off on it until the beginning of 2017. I think that's when I finally talked about it to her for the first time. I never told my dad, but I did talk to my mom. And at first, she was understanding. But a few months later, when she finally talked to my dad, he kind of persuaded her to think differently. I'm about to get into the story. So yes, my mom was like, I told you about not wanting to see David and Angie, and then I was like, oh boy, because like I said, I knew somewhere deep inside my head, I knew that the argument was going to come eventually. I wasn't sure when, but I knew, or either that or I was worried. I was just worried about it happening, one or the other. So I was like, oh gosh, because I knew it would get ugly. I knew things were about to get ugly. And then my mom was like, no, just listen to me. I forgot what she said exactly, but see, she said something along the lines of, no, just listen to me. Your dad had a very good point. He said that as a family, we should, like, do things together. And I do agree with that to some extent. I'm not saying you should always skip out on doing things with your family, but you also shouldn't be forced to do certain things either. Like, if you're the type of person that doesn't want to be drug half-assed across the country, then you shouldn't have to. Not everyone can handle that, whether they're driving or not. But yeah, I can't remember exactly how the argument went, but how the argument went, and like the order of what we said to each other, but I only remember like bits and pieces of it. And I do remember my mom yelling at me sometimes. Yelling at me a few times during the argument. Like, I remember one of the things I remember her saying, as long as you live under this roof, you will do what we say, or you will do what we do, or, something like that. That's another thing I hate. I hate it when parents try to have power over us just because we live under the same roof as them. Like, and I'm not saying we shouldn't. I'm not saying we shouldn't obey our parents. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying, like, just because we live under the same roof, that doesn't mean we should have to do things together. Or just because we're family. Actually, or, just because we live under the same roof, that doesn't mean you should force me to do things, or that you know what I mean? I can understand, like, being respectful to you and being a good person. That I get, but not being forced to go on a fucking 27 to 30 something hour road trip. Like, what is wrong with you? This video is already 13 minutes long, but I don't give a shit. I need to talk about this. It keeps getting on my chest, and I have to get it off. I'll get into other stories. But yeah, like, I actually said that to her. I can't remember if I said just because we live under the same roof, or just because we're family, but I said one of those things. Then I said, that doesn't mean we have to do everything together. And then my mom was like, yeah, it does. And then like, towards the end of the argument, she said, even 10-year-olds understand that. Okay, first of all, not everyone is going to have the same beliefs. If there's 10-year-olds that believe that families should do everything together, even if their kids aren't cut out for it, then they're forced against their will. If you believe that, okay. But not everyone will have the same beliefs. And second of all, I was 18 at the time, almost 19. In fact, I think it was only a few weeks until my 19th birthday. I was a freaking adult. I should be able to make my own decisions. If I feel like that I wouldn't enjoy going on this trip, I shouldn't have to go. You know what I mean? like I said, I can understand having to do some things with their family. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying you should just not do anything with your family. What I'm saying is you shouldn't have to be forced to do certain stuff. Like going on, like traveling halfway across the country to see people that you don't really know that well. Like, they're your parents' friends. They're not your friends. Honestly, that's something parents should do on their own. And unless they have a child that wants to go, but like if you have like childhood friends or friends that you knew like when you were younger and they lived like 20 to 30 hours away, that's something you guys that's like, to me, that's something like, that's more of a trip or like parents should take, like if they want to have like a break from their kids. Not something that will be, not something kids should be forced to do. But yeah, by the end of the argument, I can remember like crying and even like during the argument, and then my mom was like, "Don't cry." And I'm not trying to talk shit about my parents when I talk about this stuff. I love my parents, but that doesn't mean I can't talk about hardships with them, you know what I mean? But yeah, I'll talk more about this in my long road trip rant. I don't want to drag this on too long. And then I remember telling you guys the story where about the November 30th, 2012 story where my dad was yelling at me out of frustration because we were having plumbing problems. And I think one of the reasons why he was like yelling at me is because it was almost Christmas. And my parents were trying to save up money for Christmas. But I think what happened was he had to take some of the money out to fix the plumbing issues. So he had to resave some of that money for Christmas 2012. And I get it. That's frustrating. Especially if you want your kids to have like a good Christmas. But we can't help like having plumbing issues. And second of all, you should never take your anger out on someone. Like, that's a big no-no. If you're angry, like, you should find a better way to release it. So yeah. And then I remember getting yelled at back in, I think it was May. I'm pretty sure it was May 2018 sometime. I don't remember the exact date, but I'm pretty sure it was sometime in May 2018. We were having spaghetti for dinner, and my brother wanted to eat in his room, so I wanted to eat in my room, so I could eat spaghetti and watch planes. That's my favorite movie of all time, as some of you may know. And I was like really, really into the franchise at the time. That was my main fandom at the time. So anyway, since my brother was allowed to eat in his room, I wanted to eat in my room too. so I can watch my favorite movie and it would be fair. But my mom wouldn't let me eat in my room. And my mom said it was because my brother had a TV tray up. So she told me, and then I was like, I forgot what I said, but I think I said something along the lines of, but that's not fair. Why does he get to eat in his room, but I don't? And then my mom was like, he has a TV tray. But like louder than that. And I think it did make me cry. I think I do remember crying a little bit from that. So what did I do? I sat there in the kitchen for like 10 to 15 minutes waiting for my mom to leave. And then I got my spaghetti, took it to my room, and ate it in there. Oh, you're disobeying your parents, Shauna. Wow. No. It's not that. It's just not fair that my brother got to eat in his room, but I don't, but I didn't, I was careful. I'm careful when it comes to, at least when it comes to some stuff, sometimes I'll still make mistakes, but for the most part, I try to be as careful as I can. I sat in my chair and used my bed as a table for the spaghetti. Again, I'm not trying to talk shit about my parents. But it does feel good to talk about the hardships we have with them. And I'm not trying to sound like I was disobeying my mom. It's just not fair that my brother got to eat in his room, but I didn't, all because he had a TV tray. If he would have eaten in the kitchen, I probably wouldn't have even asked. I would probably just have eaten in the kitchen and he eat in the kitchen and it would be a normal evening. But yeah. I'm trying to think of some other stories of getting yelled at. I told you about a time where my 8th grade history teacher got yelled at me. It was because he basically yelled at me for no reason. It was because I didn't take my paper out right away. And then it's just you gotta be patient. People need time to take shit out. It was either that or I didn't hear him. It was one of those, but it's not like I was deliberately trying to not take my paper out. I was gonna get it out. I just needed time to find it. I also remember another reason he yelled at me. Oh, and that other time where he yelled at me to get my paper out. I don't remember crying, but it did make me nervous, and I think it did put me in a bad mood. There was another time where he yelled at me. I forgot what. I think it was either for the same reason or it was because, or he was yelling at me to turn to the right page, which that takes time too to do. For any teachers out there, please be patient. If any teachers are watching this, just because your students don't do something right away, that doesn't mean they're disobeying you. They just need time to. They need time to find stuff or turn to the right page. So yeah. I'm trying to think of some other reason, other times I got yelled at. I always try to be a good kid, so thankfully it doesn't happen very often. So, but yeah, I'm trying to think of some other times. I can't really think right now. But I'll talk about something else in this video. That something kind of similar. I also hate it like when people get mad at me, like they're not like necessarily like yelling at me, but they just get upset over doing petty things or me making a mistake. Like, ugh. Like, for example, I can remember a time where this was back when we lived in South Texas. I think it was shortly before we moved to West Texas. This was in May or June of 2019. Me, my dad, and my brother were eating at La Playa. And the waitress came over. You know, I don't really like it when people like grab onto my chair while I'm sitting there. It makes me feel really uncomfortable. So the waitress came in. She was grabbing onto my chair, and then I was like, "Excuse me," and my dad got mad at me. And I don't think he yelled at me, but he did get upset with me. And he said that was rude. I don't remember if that made me cry or not. But I do remember getting into a really, really bad mood after that. That's something that I struggle with a lot. Like, sometimes, like, I'll try my hardest to be polite, but people will still think I'm being rude when I'm not trying to. That's not the case. That happens a lot with me. So yeah. And I remember one of my teachers from high school, I had her in 9th grade and I had her in 12th grade. She would get mad at me for the stupidest things sometimes. I remember saying, like, this was in December 2015. This was the last day before Christmas break. I said that the superintendent was mean and strict. But yes, I was in the 12th grade when this happened. I remember when I had her for first period, we were talking about, some of the kids were talking about the superintendent, some of the other students, and I remember saying that the superintendent was strict and mean. And Miss Serp got mad at me and claimed I was being rude. And yeah, I think it made me cry a little bit, and it did ruin a portion of my day. That's another thing that happens, like when I get yelled at or like scolded or griped at. Sometimes it will like ruin a portion of my day and even my whole day sometimes. So yeah. Like I said in my other getting yelled at rant, it's a different story, like if, like, let's say you and a person are like far away from each other, or you guys are in like different rooms, so then they want to like call you for something. Hey Shauna, can you come here a minute? That's fine. Like, that's normal. That's just normal communication right there. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about like discipline, anger, disapproval, that shit. I'm not talking about just, hey, can you please come here? No, that's fine. There's a difference between calling someone's name out and just like yelling at them. But yeah. That's all I really have to say for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. I know I spent almost half of this video talking about one incident, but that one incident is what gets to me the most, with the long road trip incident, which I'm going to be remaking that rant pretty soon too. So keep a lookout for that one. Anyway, I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.